What's going on, everybody? Gideon here from Manna Entertainment. Today's video is going to be about games that I wanted to design, and part of the reason I made Manna Entertainment was because I wanted to get filthy stinking rich, super successful, make games that people just love and can't stop talking about, so I can have A, the money, B, the power and the influence, and C, the fame and the popularity that I can go to these studios and actually do what I'm going to talk about that we're going to do here. So, it's Gideon from Manna Entertainment. Here's the intro. So, the first game I want to talk about in the series that I wanted to do is Mega Man Proto. Mega Man Proto. Now, what the heck is that? You say, well, I'll let you know. I'll show you a screenshot of the story and, basically the premise and the idea of the game, as well as my original drawing in my notes. I did this back in 2003. So without further ado, here's a story for Mega Man Proto. The year is 20XX. Mega Man finally put a stop to evil Dr. Wily and his schemes to rule the world. Dr. Light put Mega Man to rest, for he was not needed. But Rock refused, saying, "It's vacation time, woohoo!" X years later, a mysterious woman sent out new bots to threaten the Earth once again. Cue the bad person. Roll, Rock's sister, has been kidnapped. Rock's brother, Proto Man, is nowhere to be found, and Dr. Light is also missing. Now Rock must save his family and save the world once more. So yeah, I did that back in 2003. That was Mega Man Proto, and the idea I had with this game was I played Mega Man Legends, so I was already influenced by that game, but I was already thinking kind of ahead of my time. I was thinking probably the best way to describe the aiming system that I had now would probably be kind of like Resident Evil 4 and The Last of Us, all the new modern third-person shooters that basically they control like first-person shooters, but they're actually played from a third-person perspective, meaning you would have like the ability to aim Mega Man's Buster Shot or whatever all over. So it was going to be a full 3D world, huge worlds, cell shaded, and actually each world, it was not. I actually envisioned this as an open world game, so it would have hubs, right? Where or not hubs, basically every part, like every man, like let's say Guts Man, Flame Man, Bomb Man, all those kind of men that were gonna be in the Mega Man games. So each of the 8 bosses were gonna have their own platforming world with its own sets of challenges. So I kind of wanted it to be like a platformer slash shooter, because that's how I felt that 2D Mega Man games were, and that's what made them great. They were platformers, but they were also kind of shooters for their time. They didn't have obviously 8-way directions until Mega Man and Bass came out, which was a very awesome game. I don't know if you guys remember that game, but I'll show you a picture of it if you don't. And yeah, so I wanted to do that with this game, and I wanted to be able to, have this system and this idea where I would actually have this story where it was a kind of a reimagining of the Mega Man series, but I wanted it to be its own thing, but based on the Mega Man universe. So what happens is Proto Man is, kidnapped by this evil, this new Dr. Wily female, who I don't even remember what I was going to call her, but whatever her name is, the female Dr. Wily, or Dr. Wily's daughter. Let's say it was her daughter, because that's kind of cool. Dr. Wily had a kid because, when he was, all those times he was frustrated, trying to make bots to destroy Mega Man and Dr. Light, he had to take his frustration out somewhere. So Dr. Wily got busy and made this new chick that she's the new bad girl. So games, that's kind of stuff happened. I'm a kid. I thought that makes sense. Anyway, so, the story would be that Proto Man was kidnapped as well as Dr. Light, and Dr. Light was basically forced to create this new bad boss, which would be the final boss in Mega Man. So for the first time, you would not be fighting the Dr. Wily bad guy, or maybe we could have had a fight like that just for nostalgia, but the actual boss fight was going to be this new antithesis to Mega Man, right? So Mega Man being Mega Man, obviously, he's determined, he's willing to go rock it out, no pun intended, Rockman, I guess. But Mega Man being Mega Man needed some help, so he actually finds these relics, these parts that were left behind by Proto Man, and Dr. Light actually tricked the bad person into leaving Proto Man's codes and basically his battle experience and his awesomeness. Because I don't know if you guys remember, the Proto Man was pretty awesome. He was hardcore gangster. And yeah, so Mega Man was gonna get Proto Man's powers, have the cool little cape, like the drawing that I did. I'll put it again so you guys can see it here. And yeah, that was gonna be the idea. And I don't know if you guys see, but right up here it says make a deal with Capcom to make this game. So obviously, even in 2004, which was what 14 years ago, and I'm 32. I want to say 30 something. I was like in my early 20s at this time. I think I was 18 or 19 actually. And yeah, that was my idea. Naive, right? But anyway, on to the next one. So the next game that I wanted to do was a reimagining or reboot of Castlevania, if you will. Now, Castlevania was a story that back then I had heard that, about the Game Boy game Castlevania Legends. And I'll show you guys this drawing that I did of Sonia Belmont. That was my reimagining of Sonia Belmont. But basically, I love the idea and the concept that this female Belmont was actually the first one to fight Dracula. I thought that was so cool because she's like the matriarch of all these super hardcore Belmonts. I mean, going back to Trevor, Simon, Richter, and turns out that later on she got retconned out of the official timeline, so she's part of the alternate timeline. In Lament of Innocence, whoever that Belmont was, that was the original first Belmont, which I guess, it's always the dudes with the whips fighting, and that's not, I don't hate on that. I love Castlevania, but I wasn't sure, to be honest. I wrote down all this stuff about Castlevania and the next game that I'm going to talk about, but when I spoke about Castlevania, when I wrote down the information about Castlevania, I was hotly debating if I wanted to make an HD sprite 2D game similar to Castlevania Symphony of the Night, because it's one of my favorite games of all time, and I love Metroidvania, so Super Metroid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night are among my most top-rated games. They're definitely top 5 for me of all time, and I played some really good games. But I wanted to make a game just like that. That was gonna be the 2D side-scrolling one, and if not 2D, I actually had an idea for how they could do a 3D Castlevania, and the idea that I had was what game can I compare it to now? Probably the most similar thing that I could think of is Batman Arkham Asylum. Okay, if you remember the Arkham series, in these games, it was 3D, and you do stealth and you do all that kind of stuff. It wasn't going to be a stealthy Castlevania. It was going to be more action oriented, where you're fighting monsters constantly. But that kind of like 3D Metroidvania style. If you notice, the Arkham games are kind of like a Metroidvania, just in 3D. Where you can't get to certain areas unless you unlock certain abilities or certain new upgrades for yourself, and then eventually for the Batmobile. Going back to that, I wanted to make a game that was like that, and I guess I was ahead of my time again, but it's been there, it's been done, and unfortunately, for whatever reason, Konami and everybody who's taken a stab at Castlevania just can't seem to do it right. They can't seem to get that Metroidvania style that everybody loves about Castlevania. So that was another game that I wanted to go ahead and, basically reach out to Konami and be like, look, we're making so much money and we're so popular, my company, which I didn't have a name for at the time, Manna Entertainment, shame, yeah. Manna Entertainment. Anyway, my company that I imagined having at the time was going to be so successful and so famous and so popular that we're going to go to Konami and talk to them or whatever. And now, in real life, these designs that I have or whatever, I don't remember where I wrote down all this stuff for Castlevania and the next one, but I still have it in my mind, and I still have the concepts. I have the drawing that you guys are going to see for the Castlevania, for Sonia Belmont, and I basically wanted to do a reimagining of her story. Whether it was going to be a 2D or a 3D game, the story was going to be the same, and the story was going to be that she was the original Belmont, and that she actually fell in love with Dracula, when trying to kill him. So she didn't actually kill him, and that basically she had, she was from the church, like she was from the order of Ecclesia, let's say, and she had all these magical powers or whatever, and it was going to be kind of a similar thing to Alucard, where it was going to be that, the grand reveal was going to be that all these years Alucard thought he was alone, but he's actually related to the Belmonts because Sonia and Dracula, fell in love, and Sonia didn't kill him, and in not killing him, they had the first Belmont, child, which would have been whoever, I think Trevor or Christopher Belmont, one of those two. But basically, that child would have been the son of Dracula, but raised by the church to not be told of the true origins of who they were. But it's also one of the reasons why the Belmont family is able to kill Dracula, because they have his genes, his blood. And in that blood, whereas Alucard was half vampire, which, that was going to be part of the story as well. He was basically a half vampire, half human. What happened with the Belmonts was instead of gaining vampire powers, they actually gained the powers to kill vampires. So hence the vampire killer whip, the most popular item in Castlevania. That's that, and that's how I was going to go about that. And for the 3D game, it would have been, some, like what I mentioned before, and it would have had a lot of like exploration, like Batman Arkham Asylum, and like latching onto stuff with the whip to pull yourself up. Same way as Batman had the grappling hook. I couldn't remember when I played Batman Arkham Asylum. I fell in love with that game because all I could think is this is how Castlevania needs to be done in 3D, and the newer ones didn't really do it for me. Like they had amazing graphics. Story was alright, but it just didn't do it for me. So on to the next game. The next game I want to talk about is Final Fantasy. So I'm just gonna give you guys a little FYI. All right. I originally wanted to start with Final Fantasy 1 and remake these games in 3D. And actually, I wanted to do something that was kind of bold because I thought it would look so unique and so cool. I don't know if fans would have enjoyed it, and honestly, I don't know if it would have been the best option for marketing. But I was a big fan of cell shading. In fact, I still am. Cell shading is still used, and now it's used better than ever in games like CyberConnect's like Naruto series. The Naruto fighting games are probably the best example of cell shading I've ever seen. And every time I watch it, it makes me just like, I just watch it in awe at how amazing and fluid it is, So anyway, yeah, those CyberConnect games, and Ni no Kuni, like like Level 5, they're another one that's really good at doing. They're another one that's really good at doing cell shading games. So Final Fantasy, right? My ultimate goal and ultimate desire, and still to this day, is to be able to have the money, power, influence, all that stuff, to go to Square Enix and say, I want you to give us the license to develop a remake of Final Fantasy VI. It's my favorite game of all time. I wanted to give that game the treatment that at the time, Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, and 10 were getting. But, I think 10 was out already at that point. But basically, I wanted to bring what the Final Fantasy 7 remake is supposed to be. I wanted that to be Final Fantasy VI, but not going against the grain. Basically, I wanted to... The only thing that was going to be different and unique was going to be the art style, where I wanted it to look a little bit more like Yoshitaka Amano's original artwork. Maybe not as pronounced and not as bleached and washed out. I mean, I'll show you some of his art here. I'm a huge fan of his art, but I wanted it to kind of have like the feel and the vibe and the reminiscence of his original art, but to also kind of meld it with the more anime gameplay looking graphics of all the rest of the Final Fantasy series. Now, the cool thing I wanted to do with this Final Fantasy remake was, story-wise, it was going to be 100% the same exact story. One of the things that I might have done was I wanted to reach out to Hiranobu Sakaguchi. I'm actually friends with him on Facebook, and he's a cool guy, but he's super busy. I haven't talked to him in a while, and I need to brush up on my Japanese because it's kind of hard to communicate when his English is not horrible, but it's not the best. I mean, he's Japanese, right? Like, my wife is Japanese, and she's awesome at English, but with her parents, I feel it's the same thing. Like, we basically communicate very little, but we get the message. We get it across. So anyway, I wanted to reach out to Sakaguchi and some of the original writers of Final Fantasy. Definitely have Nobuo Uematsu redo the music in full, like, orchestrated, like, updated, whatever tech was available at the time of this project. Wanted to have him do all the music and basically keep the story all the same. And the only thing that I would have changed was adding additional things that were cut out. So, for example, I know there was a lot of areas in all the Final Fantasies that were either cut out for time or, budget concerns. And now I figured, hey, I could talk to the original geniuses behind this game and have them basically, tell us what they wanted. Like, certain parts of the story, like Daryl. If you remember in Final Fantasy VI, Daryl and Setzer and everything that was going on with there, like, it seems like some of those story arcs never finished. And I guess it's okay because they left it up to your imagination. But I would have liked to have known, how did you guys actually want this to finish? Even if it's a flashback. So aside from the super visual 3D overhaul and audio like redone, like every single track, every single sound effect, aside from that, I also wanted to actually do something interesting. I was inspired by. Do you guys remember this little game called Vagrant Story? I was inspired by Vagrant Story, and Vagrant Story, their thing was when you were fighting, it was a 3D action RPG where you actually moved around and you jumped around. It kind of reminded me of the old Landstalker games from Genesis. But Vagrant Story, I didn't want to incorporate action RPG to Final Fantasy, but I wanted to borrow one thing that they had, and that was this kind of spherical system where you can select each body part of the monster, and some body parts of the monsters were weak to certain things, and sometimes they were weaker to certain attacks and stronger to others. And I thought, how about doing that in a turn-based system? That means that every time you fight a monster, we could randomly generate a weakness in a certain area, so it's not the same boring fight every time. Because I know RPG fans don't mind grinding and just one-shotting everything, but I thought, how cool would it be if we made this system where they actually have to think and like analyze, maybe have a visual cue on each monster, and that way they'll know what to attack and have an idea and not always give it away, not always make it like for weaker enemies, like maybe have it that that you could see through them. But yeah, I thought that would be an awesome thing. I still want to do this. So at the end of the day, when it comes to the remakes we talked about, we're talking about Capcom, Konami, Square Enix. If any of the representatives at those companies are willing to front us a couple $100 million, let us borrow it so we can do these projects, we'll start right now. I'll get the team together. We'll knock it out of the park. You guys will make so much more money than what you give us, and we'll make money too. That'll be cool. But it's probably not going to happen. So in the meantime, guys, please support us with Manna Entertainment. We have the shop, mannaentertainmentshop.com. We have the game that's out and still in beta. We're still testing it. It's called Space Exodus. It's a mobile game. And yeah, I know everybody's not the biggest fan of mobile games, but try it out. It's fun. My goal was to make it something that's fun for gamers, not just people that play mobiles. And support us, guys. Support us in any way you can, because the more we grow, the more the industry is going to grow, the better things will be. And I personally guarantee that no matter how successful we get, it won't change me in the sense that we're going to all of a sudden do things like EA and Activision and all these huge companies that treat people like dirt, basically. We plan to change that, right? So, but we're never going to do that until we succeed, and we can only succeed with your help. So please like and subscribe, support us where you can. SpaceExodus.com is live. We have Manna Entertainment Shop. We have Patreon.com. All these things, we have these links in the description below. But please support us. We really appreciate it. And guys, I appreciate all the feedback and comments we've gotten on LinkedIn and Facebook when I post these videos and I share them. But if you guys don't mind, do us a favor and say these comments on the actual video itself, because I noticed that when you get more comments, more people, it just brings it up in the search, and more people will be able to see these videos, and then we can do cooler things. The more success we have, the cooler things we could do for you guys. So help us out, support us, and thanks for the love, man. Gideon and Manna Entertainment. Deuces.